everyone, Ms.R here, and we're back with Raiders Thrive. There's Mr. A and Crystal. And before we get into everything, we always do a little roundabout check-in. So, how was the week for you guys?
Well, my week is going well. Another week gone by. Thanksgiving was amazing. And really, to have a shortened week is always a blessing. So I'm happy to finish another week.
Amen.
I had a good week too. I always find that coming back to work on a Tuesday after a long weekend it takes a little while just to get my heels in the ground. But you know, I have that day, and I do all my paperwork and stuff like that. And then, you know, come Wednesday, I'm good to go. But it was a good week.
Yeah, Thanksgiving was good. The long weekend was good. I don't know if you're aware of this, Michael, but I started to plant a flower garden, and we planted bulbs with the life skills class and talked about seeds of hope and how we plant seeds of hope and how we plant seeds of hope in our friendships and that sort of thing. So hopefully in the springtime, we're going to have some nice flowers popping up around the school.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. So it was fun to be out there, but boy, manual labor really tires you out.
And you were out there for hours.
I was, because I'm like a jack of all trades, but master of none. Okay, so today's topic, we're going to jump right in. It was suggested to us by grade 12 students that we talk about vulnerability. Yeah, that's a tough, kind of a heavy topic. So I'm going to throw it out to the floor. Crystal, Mr. A, vulnerability. Get the conversation started.
Wow. Well, big topic. Thank you very much for asking it. Vulnerability is, I guess, that thing that makes us all cringe.
Yes, I just cringed when she said it.
I'm even cringing at that because, you know, vulnerability a lot of times speaks to, you know, deficits, speaks to areas where you're not good enough. It speaks to things that, you know, right off the bat come off as negatives, you know, weaknesses. So yeah, I mean, I cringed a bit, but we'll get more into it.
Yeah, I agree. When she said it, I was like, oh, like, you know, you have to, vulnerability is like you're really putting yourself out there, and you're exposing yourself for others to see. And that's a tough one. That's a real tough one.
Yeah, and as you guys were getting this going, a few things popped into my head. In our society that likes to compare,
yeah,
that can trigger our insecurities.
Yeah.
And so when I think of vulnerabilities, I think of a few things. I think of trust. I'm not going to show my vulnerable side to someone I don't trust. And then so part of that is I'm going to build walls around myself to protect those vulnerabilities. I don't want people to know, maybe she doesn't have it together. I don't want people to know, oh, I'm not perfect. You know, so we create a veneer of I've got it together.
Yeah.
And then, but I'm going to go home and cry alone.
Yeah. So, right? When I think about vulnerability, I mean, we're in a high school setting. I think about my first school dance and that individual that I liked and wanted to go and ask them to dance, but I was nervous, you know, not wanting to step outside of my comfort zone. I also think about my first interview that I ever had at McDonald's and just how uncomfortable it was just because of the pressure of what was at stake and just how vulnerable I felt because of the unknown. Yeah. So a lot of times whenever I think about vulnerability, it's just the unknown outcomes that are associated with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And acknowledging that, and I think that that's one of the biggest issues that people have with being vulnerable is you are acknowledging that you're not perfect. But in this world, nobody's perfect. And it's so easy for us to forget that, right? We put off this front as if we've got it together and we know what we're doing, and we don't want to look weak or whatever the case may be. But the fact of the matter is there is no such thing as a perfect person, and we all have vulnerabilities. And it takes, again, we talked about it last week, it takes relationships, it takes trust, it takes establishing where you fit in certain friends groups and stuff like that before you actually start to break those walls down. Again, I talked before, I've had so many relationships and so many acquaintances, but my circle is small because I choose to share and be the most vulnerable with my small circle than I do with my larger circle. Right?
I think a big thing, and that's a great point you just made, Crystal. A big thing I see for vulnerability and why I like vulnerability so much, although I cringe, is because without vulnerability, there'll be no strength.
Yeah.
Yeah. No growth.
You don't have if there's no vulnerability, there's no strength. I think the opposite of vulnerability in some sense is strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you don't know your vulnerabilities, it will be hard to also know your strengths, because your strengths will never show if you didn't know what your weaknesses, which is in a sense your vulnerability. So you have to be very okay to sit with these vulnerabilities if you want to even meet the true you.
Yes.
So it's a two-headed sword.
Yeah.
Where
for me, I find, like, when I think about like my experiences back in high school, I would never be vulnerable in a class. I will never put myself out just because it's my own fears, right? If I was sitting in the class, I remember the teacher would ask questions. Unless I knew 100%, my hand was never going up, because I didn't want to expose myself in that way, right?
Yeah.
However, if it was 1-to-1 and it was just me, after the lesson was done, I would approach the teacher and I would say, okay, listen, like, I really don't understand. That's when I would be comfortable with being vulnerable, because some people are okay. There are people who will put their hand up for every single thing